Welcome to Club Fitting Chronicles.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Club Fitting Chronicles. I'm joined here with Gene. My name is Josh. It's been a while, and I'm happy to say that we've got a great topic for discussion today, component heads. And, there's a lot of people out there that, think just because it's a component head that it's inferior or it's not a good club. So we're going to go into depth about what that means and kind of get rid of a component head in comparison to a mainstream company.
Yeah, it's good to see you. Josh can't see me, unfortunately, so he's not going to see all the beautiful heads that I display for him. I was also going to wear my Father's Day hat. All of you can see that. Solar-powered fans, which comes in handy out here in Phoenix. It was when we were playing today, it was 114. So it was a perfect hat for that. But anyway, it's good to see you, Josh. Glad that you got a day off finally after 53 days in a row.
Okay. It's good though. It's good to be back. And, the last episode was really great and went into a lot of detail. And, a lot of our viewers have been asking these questions on email. And you've even been working with, a few people at Las Colinas that are having issues with their driver, and they are from these big companies like TaylorMade and Ping and Callaway. And once again, for the record, we are not, discrediting any of these companies for what they do and the products that they make available. It's just that the reason we're doing this is to get rid of those myths that just because that's right. They're great companies and all, but there's just people out there that shouldn't be playing the drivers that they're currently playing, whether it's settings on their driver or even the kind of shaft that they have or even the kind of grip they have. And we've gone into detail about every single piece and part of the golf club by now, but I can't wait to get into a little bit more depth with the head side of a driver.
I'm going to hold up in a little bit that and put together, and really love the way it sets up, love the way I hit the ball with it. I haven't committed to building another set of clubs now that I am officially retired, so I don't have the vast income of a part-time teacher coming in, $4, $5, $6 a week. But the question that I got both on the from our listeners and also from one of the guys that I'm working with is, well, what is the component? Why would I even want to consider that? And one of the things that we will put together this is kind of like a series, the next couple of podcasts. I'm going to show you how to build a golf club very simply. I was online looking at some of them, and some of them you only had to watch like 32 hours worth of videos to get a golf club put together. I don't think it needs to take quite that long. So we'll put together something that just to show you how I put a golf club together really simply. But the question I keep getting asked is, well, aren't they inferior because you don't see commercials? Well, there's a reason why you don't see commercials, because they don't have tens of millions, hundreds of millions, thousands of millions or billions of dollars. Many of you are probably aware of names like Scott Verplank. If not, he was a really good player in the late 80s, 90s. He played Golfsmith heads, won some major won some large tournaments. Payne Stewart. He was on his way to pick up his set of Lynx clubs that Tom Wishon had been working on for many months when he tragically died in the plane crash. Tom was waiting at the airport for him to land that day. Phil Mickelson, some of you may have heard of him. I had a customer come in one day and said, Gene, you'll never guess what I saw. Pretty sure this was when I think it was the Open was at Southern Hills. Phil was playing with KZG irons. And I said, well, how do you know that? Because they're the same as I have that you made for me, except for his are left-handed. And he had lead tape across where the KZG part was. Steve Alker, he's playing new level. Brian Moore on the PGA Tour, new level. Patrick Reed, he was playing Grindworks for a couple of years. Why do they play with the major companies? One real simple reason, money. Rory makes $10 million a year playing his TaylorMade clubs. And I was doing all kinds of research now that I'm semi-officially retired. Even guys that we probably, if we read off their names, and you would go, I think he was a car salesman. No, he's on tour. Between clothing, hats, and clubs, it's somewhere around $100,000 to $200,000 a year. A friend of mine, Kronos Putters, there was a well-known touring pro who wears a bucket hat, who was going to be playing using a Kronos putter, really liked it. And he went to my friend, the owner of the company, and said, for a mere $6,000 a week, I will use your putter. Scotty Cameron putters. Why do we all know about him? There's this guy, his initials TW. I think it's Tiger Woods. He was given a Scotty Cameron putter back when he was like 15, 16 years old. And he was still rocking it when he was starting to play at Stanford and win some tournaments and getting some notoriety. Guess what? Scotty Cameron putters went big time.
Mm-hmm.
Scotty Cameron, from information that I have gathered, was a sales rep for a putter company overseas. And that's where he got his introduction into putters. Didn't come out of college as a designer of putters. He was a sales rep. And for Odyssey, if I remember correctly. And he hooked up with a machinist in Oceanside, California, and started having him make putters. And if you look at a Scotty Cameron putter, there are a couple of funky ones, but for the most part, they're just a regular old putter. There are a lot more high-tech putters than a Scotty Cameron. Not that you need a high-tech putter, but again, they weren't always big companies. Or in some cases, you don't have to be a big company to make a splash. I told Josh, we'll quiz him. What were some of the major companies in 1980 in the golf world?
They weren't the ones that are still around today. I think Titleist was still one.
Titleist was a company, yeah. They bought Golfcraft in the 60s.
MacGregor was a big one.
Very good.
Spalding.
Yep.
Wilson.
Spalding was a player. Lee Trevino played him.
Top Flight.
Well, and that was part of Spalding.
Gotcha. Okay. Wilson. Still one. TaylorMade wasn't in there. Nope. Cobra wasn't in there. Nope. Callaway wasn't in there.
I named one of them.
Lynx.
Freddie Couples.
Yep.
And
Lynx.
Ernie Els played Lynx. Founders Club. There's a guy who makes wedges who got to start.
I've seen those clubs.
Yep, Founders Club. Ram
was also a big one.
Yep. Hogan.
Ben Hogan's, the Apexes.
Yep. So let's move into the 90s.
Oof. Spalding, did they? No, they
were still around, but just newer, different companies.
Lynx was definitely still around.
Yeah, Lynx was still around.
Cleveland, they weren't Dunlop Sports back then, right?
Nope.
No, they were just, okay.
Tommy Armour. Adams.
So I'm starting to see a trend here.
In the 90s, around in the 2000s, Nike never built their own clubs, period. They were always designed and manufactured by others. Max Fly. Wow. Bridgestone.
Yeah, you don't see these companies around anymore.
No. And the thing is, in a lot of cases, they made either, the golf world, there's only so many golf clubs you're going to sell. And as I'll use Adams. When Adams came in, what was their number one club? The Tight Lies. Their fairway wood. And then what ends up happening, there were companies like Snake Eyes, same thing. They make great wedges, and then they started to branch off into other clubs. And what does it take when you start branching off into making more and more and more and more hits? Money, and you have to have sales. And a lot of those companies, they tried to corner a niche or a part of the market, and they didn't have the capital to do it. They didn't take off the way they were hoping, and so a lot of times companies didn't quite catch on. They went up like a rocket and came back down to earth rather quickly also. But all of them made great clubs, even though we don't think of them today as major manufacturers. They were the TaylorMades, they were the Callaways of their day.
That's interesting.
I've shared the story before. Callaway. I used to go to the winery, Callaway Winery in Temecula, California. He went from that and he bought a hickory sticks golf company. They made putters and they made wedges out of hickory stick, wooden shafted clubs. Have what you putted with my Callaway original hickory shafted putter. And then he went around driving in I was told it was a Cadillac. I wasn't living along the coast then, and I wasn't rich enough to play some of the golf courses he was going to. And he started trying to sell golf clubs out of the back end of his car. And I don't know whether he sold off the winery or what he did to start getting more and more and more capital. And Callaway eventually became known as a company, and they hit it big with the Big Bertha. If they hadn't hit the Big Bertha, they probably would have went the same direction as a lot of the other companies that we had read off. PXG, Bob Parsons was getting frustrated. He couldn't get clubs that he liked. So what did he do? He sold GoDaddy and he bought his own company. He stole some designers from Ping and started making golf clubs. The only difference was he said, don't worry about how much they cost. So, some of the ideas, again, they're not superior. I play with some PXG irons. I also am I'm currently showing a club. This is something I picked up from Golfworks. And you know what? If I hit it and I hit it's a 6-iron, and I hit my current 6-iron PXG, and I hit my Tom Wishon single length 6-iron, guess how far they all go? Same distance. And guess what they all feel? The same. And it's amazing, but they actually work, and they don't have a big name label on them. Some of the head that I bought from Golfworks, because I don't have an account with them, I think it cost me $50. It's a solid. It's a hollow body head. It's a little bit thinner top line than my PXG. It's a little bit thinner sole for being out here in Phoenix and not wanting to bounce off the earth. But it's a great club. But people have to get over the idea that the major companies are the only companies that you can buy a golf club from.
Or the more it costs, the better it is.
Exactly. Yeah. To me, I look at it more, the more it costs, the less golf I play. So with that, I did a quick list, and maybe we'll put this out in the notes with the episode. This was just off the top of my head. Companies that I have bought golf equipment from. And I'll do share a little tiny bit about some of them. SMT. They made their big thing was drivers. They had, when we talked to Adam, I mentioned SMT drivers because they didn't have score lines across the face. So They could build them a little tiny bit thinner, and you could get more ball speed. You can make the face a little thinner because you didn't cut off.
Sure, because you had a student that was breaking club heads like crazy.
Yep. Bang Golf. For a while, they had the driver that had the longest recorded drive at a long driving contest. I built the driver.
I remember them.
For a guy with about 100 and what did he have? 133 mile an hour club head speed. And we built a Bang driver. And you could get those down to like 4.5 degrees of loft, which would be perfect for you. You could keep the ball, underneath most bridges. And in the summertime here, that would roll for 4 miles. Monark is they have all kinds of different components, and we'll talk more about some of these companies in upcoming episodes. But Monark, I bought a putter for my the boy that I work with, and I'm going to pick up a left-handed driver for him, because trying to find a left-handed driver, sometimes that doesn't cost an arm and a leg, because he's in high school and he's really good at not taking good care of his equipment. So I don't want to spend a lot of money on his driver. Golfworks, I mentioned showed the one head. I'm going to show another head. This one has a little weight that I can add, easily changing swing weight. This is the guy who was asking about can a component company actually make a good head? I made him a 6-iron, and I got a email from him the day after I gave him the 6-iron, telling me just how wonderful it was, and that he was ready to, after hitting it the first time, he was like, let's build a set. This is a little sandwich that we're making. You notice it's got a little wider sole, which is good for like most of you. Again, I think this one's it's a forged head, and it costs like $45, $40. That's not bad for a forged head.
Mm-mm.
There's a company called Value Golf, KZG. KZG had, I know Clay Long used to design stuff for him. Who's Clay Long? Nicholas holding up the putter, the big monstrous putter on the 16th hole or 17th hole at the Masters was. Clay Long designed that because he designed all of the clubs that Jack was using during the 80s and early 90s when he owned MacGregor. Geek, Geek.com Golf. Again, decent enough clubs. Some of them were a little funky. I don't know if before Bubba made pink driver heads fashionable, you could get a pink one. Epon. Epon is like, they make some really incredibly high-tech forged heads. We'll use, a company comes to them wanting them to build something special, and they'll use that technology to then go beyond that and design something for themselves and put Epon on it. Vega, Sub 70, Haywoodgolf, Krank. You ever hear of Krank? There's this guy who won the U.S. Open last year, plays with the Krank driver. Swing Science, Wishon, Hireko, Takomo.
That's a big one nowadays, Takomo.
Yep.
And they're really one of the only component companies, in my opinion, them and New Level Golf, that are really marketing themselves amongst the influencer side of golf. So you have, the influencer side of golf that is pertaining to the younger demographic or the, I guess, newer demographic of golfers. That's kind of the raise right now is those Takomo irons.
Yep.
I see a bunch of stuff from them and New Level Golf on Instagram, and Krank as well is also a big one just because Bryson DeChambeau. But yeah.
Yep. And right after my Takomo was New Level, and again they have a little bit more capital probably, and that's because the influencers, it costs you money. And a lot of those companies, it's hard to break into the golf world with equipment and be able to sustain it for a long period of time. The only thing I don't like about the Takomo, you have to buy a complete set of iron heads. So you have to buy 4 through pitch or 4 through gap wedge.
Sure.
Well, their 4 iron is like 20 degrees of loft. I'm not going to get that up off the ground. In fact, I think it's 19 degrees of loft. I think their 5 iron is 21.5.
Oh, wow.
And again, my ball flight. I am not the highest ball hitter in the world. There's not particularly. Not like when we come down. We go out and played years ago, back when you were, had a life. And we could play in the summer, and I could make a snow cone when your ball came back down because there was ice crystals on it.
Very fond memories, yes.
Another one, Alpha, and they have a couple other. The company has a couple other series of Muira. Grindworks actually is back in business, and you can buy clubs through MacGregor. That was just sitting down thinking that list of names. Some of them, I'll be honest, you have to have a business. You have to be a professional club builder because they're trying to protect themselves. When PXG came out, we were one of the ADS Golf. We were one of the first companies that sold PXG irons, and they wanted to know how did we do it. They came out to our facilities and saw what we did. We did a deal when they came out with their milled wedges, and we had an open house where you could come in and try some of their wedges and stuff like that. But some of the companies, you can buy one club head. Some of the companies you have to buy it in a set. Some of the companies you're going to have to be a club maker, have a business. But there's plenty of equipment out there that people can buy, they can make, they can use that stuff to be able to, do a lot of good stuff, build their own equipment, and at a lot less price. Let's see what else. What else were we going to talk about, Josh? Josh, you still there?
I'm still here.
Okay. All of a sudden you vanished on my screen, and there was a popped up showing me that you were muted, and I was like,
oh no.
So thoughts, questions, ideas.
I just think it's very interesting. Just the whole shift in golf right now with I want to bring this up just because it's a trend I'm noticing. A lot of the newer golfers are particularly favorable of these companies, these component companies, because they're viewed as almost designer,
Mhm.
which is kind of cool to see. And there's a lot of great club builders out there that make really cool stuff. And because there's so many designer shafts out there too. Not saying that there wasn't before, but I think it's becoming more prominent. These people wanting their club makeup to be a little bit more flashy, which I think is cool to see. There's a lot of stuff I see on Instagram of these guys who build custom clubs for people, and it's not just stamping stuff into their clubs. It's stamping stuff into like a Callaway iron or whatever. And that very well could be what they're doing for some people. But, there's companies that they buy these heads from and shafts. I saw this one, they were new level irons, and they had, what were they? They were Ventus blue iron shafts. They're graphite. Obviously it was a Ventus blue, but it also had blue paint fill. It was really, really cool. And the grips were like the Golf Pride MCC blue and black. They were really, really cool clubs. But, you're starting to see a lot more of that nowadays. And I think, social media and the influencer marketing is really pushing these companies forward and bringing them back into the limelight.
Yep. I'm holding up right now the Tour Dynamics JC52, the driver that my partner Scott and I, along with Clay Long, came to design. We had design features that other companies wish they could do. The hosel, we could bend this to change lie angle. We could bend it to change face angle. When we got the faces, we were able to ultrasound each face. And if the face was a little teeny tiny too thick, we polished it down so that it was still in the legal limit, but it was polished down so that we could get the most out of it. And we put right back here, there's a little weight port, and it's the size of a dime. I can hot melt it all I want. I could hot melt it and get the weight down here in the toe. I could put it in the heel. It made it out onto the LPGA tour. Gal that was playing it picked up 10 yards over her previous season with a component driver head, from a big company, ADS Golf, that made 300 of them, and that's all that were ever made. It made it out into the McKinsey Tour. It was played with in South America, but again, it was a component. I even went online. You can still go to the USGA and you can look up Tour Dynamic JC52 and you'll see a picture of it because it's a conforming head. And I was doing some tests, looking at some of the other club heads that was just picking Hireko and started looking, and the driver heads are conforming. Now there are some non-conforming driver heads, and they'll tell you right up front, this is a non-conforming driver head. You can still find heads that are 560 cubic centimeters non-conforming. A huge trampoline if you're, somebody who doesn't care about being in the legal limit, but you're, approaching losing distance mightily. You can pick up a little bit of distance that way. Even with Krank, they offer some things for people with slower club head speeds. But the big thing is we're going to get into next time, talking about how much some of these things can cost you, how little some of these things would cost you, what companies you can order direct from. All of them you can buy shafts. Well, I shouldn't say all of them. Some of them are just simply component head companies, but a lot of the companies you can buy your shafts. You can have them build the club for you. You can tell them what you want to have put together, and you can still do it for next to nothing. I was doing some little research, and I was finding like an iron you could pick. I picked the most expensive graphite shaft that they were offering with a component head, and 6 irons cost $300. That's pretty cheap. Again, we'll talk about how you can go use this information to fit yourself. One of the things I encourage people to do, go out to one of the stores, grab a 60-gram shaft, a 70-gram shaft, an 80-gram shaft, a 90-gram shaft, a 100-gram shaft, depending on your age and your strength and stuff. If you're younger and more aggressive, we've covered these things. Go to the higher weights, but those are getting even harder and harder to find anything on the 100+ gram weights. And you'll know you're not going to have it fine-tuned, but you're going to be able to swing one and go, I like this better than this.
Right.
Josh, we went through that. How hard was it?
It was definitely an experience. I wouldn't say it was the most difficult thing ever.
No, usually you looked at me after one swing.
It was fairly simple. I mean, you would go up and I'd hit a ball. You'd look at my reaction. I'd look back at you. I'd say, yeah, let's go to the next one. I'd hit that one. And it's just, a one and done thing for some, and for others, it's let me hit a couple more, but you really do know the one for you when you hit it. Cause feel, sound, the look, everything that goes into what people like, it stands out right at you whenever it's the one.
Yep. And the biggest thing is, there's a lot to be said about the way it looks. Amen. Right. I've shared my story of the 5-iron that was tossed into the trunk.
Shovel.
The shovel, exactly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, from everything else about it was perfect. I just couldn't stand the way it looked. The new 6-iron that I'm playing around with, I have the same shaft that I play in my irons. Why? Because I like that weight. Now, the one thing I did do, instead of doing all the weighting internally, I wanted it on the back of the club because I wanted to play around with swing weight. I'm going to be 68 in a couple months. Do I need to drop my swing weight down from D4 to D3? I don't know. But it's hard if I put it inside, but it's easy if I put it on the outside, and I can even just trim off a little bit and see, do I like that better? And I can dial it in pretty easily. And that's what we're doing with the gentleman I'm making this set of irons for. We'll buy the weights that are appropriate to get it to the weight that he wants when we have figured out, well, do we want a moment of inertia weight these, or do we want to just straight line, swing weight them all at the same swing weight? He's intrigued by the idea of moment of inertia, but he doesn't quite understand, and it's hard to explain to somebody, just like when we went and did yours. How do you explain what moment of inertia weighting feels like?
Right.
You got to experience it. So that'll be interesting, but, there's a lot to be, imagine how cool everybody would be with lead tape on the back of their clubs.
It's becoming a more popular thing.
Yeah.
Lead tape. I have some buddies of mine that, some avid golfers, some, just getting into the game, and they see stuff on Instagram or YouTube of lead tape, and they go, oh, that looks cool. Or it's a fashion statement. Like I said, all this stuff with the component companies and being trendy and flashy, that's a big thing nowadays. A lot of people are trying to be, that more designer side of golf, and they view stuff like that and they learn stuff like that. And it's very cool to see just the new side of golf. But yeah, there is a lot more people out there with a little bit of lead tape on their clubs, whether it's their irons or their wedges or their putters. It's fun to see.
Yeah. And the thing is, it's amazing how many people think that a company located in Carlsbad, California, got out their crystal ball. They saw your swing, and they said, let's make a club that will fit this person and every other human being on the face of the planet. Can you imagine opening up a shoe store? We sell size 7.
One style shoe.
Yeah. We sell 34 regulars.
I think they do something like that in a small country called North Korea.
Yeah. Yeah. But, the idea of components, we don't want them to scare you. We want you to, you can even use these to help you to figure out what major company clubs, if you gotta have a major company's clubs, building, if I were going to go out and buy myself a set of, I don't know, whoever's clubs, what would I do? I'd make myself a 6-iron and figure out, what shaft do I like? I already know what the weight is. I toyed around with, do I want to put a graphite shaft in? But I know me. No, I don't like graphite shafts all that much. Not in irons. I want to know that I just strike that ball. I want to know that I missed it by a 1/4 of an inch or an 1/8 of an inch. I can feel that miss, but on graphite I can't. I don't have the fine tuning that I have with steel. But I can build a club and I can figure out what I want, and then, okay, I know I need the swing weight here. I know I love this weighted shaft. I love the way it feels. Unfortunately, a lot of the major companies are limiting more and more the number of options you have, which I think will probably, I know why they're doing it. It saves money. You think of all the, think of all the different shafts out there on the market. How many of them do you want sitting up on a shelf, and hoping that somebody will say, yes, let's pick this one. So hopefully this will help you. Still waiting for anybody to tell me what golf courses in Scotland I need to play. Can you believe nobody has answered the question? I know we had 70
Royal door
in
knock.
England. Now, we didn't have any in Scotland this last episode, but we had a lot in England. And I know England is real close to Scotland since you share a border. And I apologize for not going to England to play, but my friend who is helping finance this trip said, let's go to Scotland, go to the home of golf. So don't know that we're going to play there, but we're looking for what other golf courses could we play? And again, not the ones that you see on television, but the ones that are, I grew up playing at a golf course we affectionately called Crudsville. It was in Northville, Michigan. It doesn't exist anymore. They used broomsticks for the flags. They cut everything at the same length. That was easier that way, except for the greens. The greens were a little shorter, except for when all the white dandelions would spring up each year. And then there would be 452 million balls sitting out there on the fairway, and you'd have to try to find yours. But I love that course. I wish it was still in existence. It cost me, I think it was $3 to play 18 and $2.50 to play 12. You didn't play 9 because the ninth hole was like a mile and a half away from the clubhouse. And you could get a Pepsi at the turn, or after 12, you could go in and get a Pepsi, or after 18, go in and get a Pepsi. And it was 25 cents, including the deposit on the bottle. And the Pepsi, you got your nickel back when you gave them back.
Wow.
But yeah, it doesn't have to be a fancy golf course, just a beautiful setting. Some history would be great, but looking for somebody to help point out the direction we should be looking at. And I think that's all I have. How about you, Josh? Any final words of wisdom?
Hit it in the fairway, hit it on the green.
What did you think of the U.S. Open?
It was a great showing by JJ Spawn.
Yep.
I think that putt on the last was incredible. I think it was well-deserved. He was out of it, the first 5 holes into his final round, and that weather delay that happened really, really helped him hone in, and I think ultimately led him to his win.
Yep.
All in all, it was a great test of golf. I love seeing golf tournaments, especially majors, finish, one a couple under or, a couple over par. And, it just goes to show the age-old saying always holds up to the test of time is you're never always out of it. You're never out of it. And that's always, no matter what, you're never out of it until it's over. And, that was showcased by JJ yesterday.
Yep. It was fun to watch. I wouldn't want to try to play some of the shots that they were playing.
No.
Not with cameras on.
And the rain too. And yeah. It just, there's so many things that I was like, I wouldn't be a fan.
Yeah.
I'd be like more Shane Lowry where, I'm there's a little bit of F-bombs going around, on the camera just because, there's some bad breaks that I'm getting. But yeah, all in all, it was a fun tournament to watch.
Yep, I'm with you. Augusta after.
Like I said, you're never out of it. There we go.
Well, again, thankful that you're out there. Please continue to share. Thankful for all those that have found us. And again, let us know what we could do with, we figure we have another episode to 2 episodes where we're going to start talking, show you how to build them very quickly, very easily. We'll show you without using any big tool, how you can do it so you don't have to worry about having all the right saws and stuff. I just want to help golfers feel like they have an answer. You don't have to go out and spend $700 on a new driver. I had many customers who would bring in their quote component driver head that they ordered and brought in with a component shaft. They drove it to my shop in their $120,000 car, and I would build them for them. And then I would ask them, when they came in the next time, how's it working? It's great. And these people could have afforded to build or have, anything else they wanted. That wasn't the issue. They wanted a club that was working for them, an offset driver at 44 inches long. Where are you going to buy that one? So God bless. See you, Sammy and Emma. We're enjoying the heat. When do you work tomorrow?
I have the next day off, and I'll be back to work on Wednesday.
Are they still air conditioning the pro shop for you?
Well, air conditioned.
Good. I'd hate for them to have you standing outside all that time, out on the patio.
And no, I kind of worked my way up from that, but good. I do it on occasion.
Well, it was good seeing you.
Likewise.
I like the haircut. You can't see mine, but God bless everybody, and thanks for listening.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks for listening. If you have any questions or comments, don't hesitate to email us. In order for us to continue equipping you with great knowledge and content, consider blessing our show financially by checking out the links in the description below. See you next time on Club Fitting Chronicles.